I haven't heard the beginning of this lo-fi track in such a long time. It's kind of surprising. Just as surprising as I learned recently that there's kind of like a live action adaptation of the comic book called The Beauty. It's weird. How is everyone? This is your friend Carlz talking about comics for yet another week, the first week of March. Ugh. I mean, I still have some days of heat left, but soon the cold is gonna settle in my side of the world, which I don't like. But anyways, at least you get to cuddle. I mean, in my case with yourself, but whatever. But cuddling is kind of like the best thing out of winter and cold in general. I don't know. It feels better than freshen up. That's one of the things I've always said, that it's better to like kind of like protect you from cold than to quench the that's for thirst only, right? But let's just say than quench your heat. I think that's a better sensation, to deal with cold than to deal with heat. But anyways, there's a live adaptation of The Beauty, which was a comic book that I really enjoyed back when it began, like the first the first story arc maybe. The whole idea of a virus that makes you instantly perfectly beautiful, and the people that refuse to take it. That was a really interesting premise. But we can't say that anything that is not Marvel or DC related as far as live action adaptations go. It's always like a B tier done, like nobody hears about it. Now there have been a lot of multimedia deals, especially with some of James Tynion properties. That's one author that I've mentioned a shit ton, and I think there's what was it? Well, it's not only James, but I think there's Something's Killing the Children adaptation coming. That other comic book, like the one with the serial killers or whatever. Fuck it. That all just reminds me of the failure of Deadly Class. That always kind of hurt. It wasn't the best adaptation, but it was fair enough. I think the main issue with the live action adaptation of Deadly Class was it that it was too tame. It was too like just mid. It didn't went as hard as the comic book. And I think sci-fi just went away, right? The network sci-fi is that still a thing? Didn't they used to show wrestling there? Fuck it, who knows? Whatever, right? Let's see what's going on with the other live action adaptations that are gonna come from other popular comic books. I mean, not. I say popular just after saying that nothing goes as hard as Marvel or DC. Whatever. I don't keep tabs too much on live action adaptations, but the one from Something's Killing the Children, I'm definitely gonna check that out, and I really hope it does well. I really do. But anyways, let's jump right into this week. A week of very many beginnings. Down here we often begin the year in March, so a lot of beginnings happen in March. I'm pretty sure it's not the same everywhere in the world, but here March is officially like the beginning of the year, like where things starts happening, and that's a perfect metaphor for comics. Let's go. This is not so much as a beginning, but more of like an end. Absolute Flash has really come into its own, but here by the end of its of its first story arc. I think Absolute Flash was, in a good way and an ironic way, kind of slow. I think all of the other Absolute titles have moved way faster than the Flash, which again, it's an irony being the Flash. But I think it has come to a point where the core, literally, of the Absolute Flash lore is coming undone, and that is the best thing. Like, one of my sayings, every player, every chess piece is right where it's supposed to be, and we finally have a reveal of what this Absolute Universe Speed Force kind of is and how it really works. And we've been kind of like introduced to what might become this universe Reverse Flash. We have the gallery of rogues, which are kind of like good guys here. We have finally the not the peak, but like the settle. Yeah, it has settled the relation between Barry Allen and this world's Flash. One of the things that has been interesting during Absolute Flash is to have this really young, really green, and not heroic at all Flash. He's really, really a teenager struggling teenager. Like, it really is. And it's kind of fresh, even though it's a trope that is commonly done in comics. Like, struggling teenager gets superpower, like probably the most common one. You often forget about it, especially for the big characters, because they haven't been teenagers in quite a long time. They did kind of something similar for Absolute Batman, but Absolute Batman doesn't feel as vulnerable as Absolute Flash does. So we are really close, if not at the end of this first story arc, and we're gonna settle on what the Absolute Flash is about universe-wise at the end of this story, which, as I said, is something all of the other Absolute titles have already gone by. Perhaps not maybe Absolute Martian Manhunter, but that's a special case. So pick up Absolute Flash. It has been one of the, I don't know, it's not my favorite, but it's interesting enough, because as I said before, I'm not a really a big Flash fan. I think it always goes back to the same time travel and shit, and hopefully they do something different with Absolute Flash. At least by now it kind of seems so. Next, in annual X-Men, they are doing what they call an artist spotlight. They're bringing a lot of new artists or like up and coming artists to do X-Men stories, and I read that synopsis and I'm like, I'm sold. That's all I need, because honestly, to be like quite honest, after the Age of Revelation, the X-Men have been in a slow slope towards the, what was the name of the next story arc? Shadows of Tomorrow. Like, it has been a slow slope, and yeah, they have been introducing like random little tidbits here and there. We had the new Cyclops book, which is kind of interesting, but it's really character based. In the Uncanny X-Men, my favorite ones, they have gone in another route as well. So I'm not expecting too much of a development here, but whenever they show a new artist, that's fun, right? At least if you're reading comics, like, the artists are part of it. So that was enough for me as a synopsis to go like, yeah, I'm gonna check it out. And if you add to that the fact that in the cover they chose to bring a Phoenix, it's something to kind of like raise your eyebrow at, like, to pay attention, because we forgot during the whole Age of Revelation, even though the Phoenix was part of the Age of Revelation in the binary book, we forgot that in the present, Jean Grey is still the Phoenix, which I think I commented once when I talk about the Phoenix book. Like, the Phoenix lore has been a mess for quite some time. Like, it's not a big deal like it was before. Come on, motorbike dude. It's not a big deal like it was before. Like, who is gonna inherit the Phoenix Force? Who is gonna be the Phoenix? And I remember, I don't think it was back then, but since then, they have hinted a lot of Jean is the Phoenix. She's always gonna be the Phoenix. And I'm like, okay. So you just have like almost a godlike entity in a permanent X-Men role. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see if they bring up the Phoenix to Earth and deal with mutant stuff. I think they intentionally did that, but they fucked up a little bit. I mean, it's like, okay, let's make Jean a permanent phoenix. Like, let's make her permanently super powerful. But if she's on Earth and she's that powerful, that may be a problem. So just kick her out to space. Let her do some shit out in space. Let's not have her being broken on Earth. That's my feeling. But anyways, X-Men Annual. Next. Speaking of endings, I've recommended the ending of this book. I think this is like the 4th time. And why am I doing it? Because now it says right next to the title, epic finale, which is kind of like really strange because that epic finale is so small that I don't know if it's fair to call it epic. You know, it's like a tiny thing next to the title, The Avengers epic finale. Like, is it? I need to recommend it yet again because I'm still waiting for that epic finale. Like, I feel by now that this run has lasted forever. And I said like a couple of, like, what, 5 issues ago, that the whole Twilight Court and the whole thing with Camelot and the city, it has been just okay. But you know, the other day I was talking about how you can have like superhero teams, and you can have really interesting plots or ideas behind them to make new alternative superhero teams that are not the Avengers or the Justice League. And 9.5 out of 10 times they fall flat because, like, they are not the Justice League or the Avengers. It's like the same shit that happened with this Twilight Court thing. They were supposed to be the reflections of the Avengers, and sorry, but now that it's the epic finale, I'm gonna be kind of like direct and say, like, it didn't really do it for me. This last story arc of the Avengers, at the end, it didn't really do it for me. I predicted that the whole Meridian was gonna be Kang like months ago, so it really wasn't that. Oh, it came out. There you go. It wasn't really that surprising at all. So, the tiniest epic finale of the Avengers is here now, and please give me something to be excited about. Please deliver on this alleged epic finale, because the, how do you call it, the one is not the beginning of or the finale, the end. Please give me an epic finale, because the middle part has been just okay. Well, not the whole McKay run, just this last story arc. Next. This is another usual suspect that I have been following, which is Cassandra Cain as Batgirl. I thought after the last story arc ended, where she kind of sort of finished her story arc with rediscovering her family and her role in the whole League of, was it Shadows or Assassin? I always confused both of them, but fuck it, one of those leagues. It felt like a big thing, but kind of like out there, you know, like whenever you bring up these big organizations or like big bad guys, kind of like they're not characters. Like, it's not a character, it's an organization as a character. Whenever you bring one of those, it's always kind of like, is this gonna be important or not? In the case of Batgirl, it wasn't really that important. It was all about her. It was all a character-based book, to talk about the character, to give her more context, more family. But I thought that after that they were gonna move away or like move on from Batgirl, Cassandra Cain, you know. So now there's a new storyline, The Curse of the Blood, which has Cassandra using a sword, which was probably the only thing I had on my wish list after the ending of the last story arc. I was like, it's pretty cool that she uses a sword, to highlight her skills. I thought she was gonna be like, like Samurai X, the Rurouni Kenshin guy. She was gonna wear a sword that is not a sharp sword; it's a blunt sword. So you can only get hit by it. You can't get killed by it. But apparently there's like she's going meta. She's going meta. She's gonna have some weird blood powers. But the thing that caught my attention the most was that Cassandra has become Batgirl for like the recent future. I mean the recent present or the recent past, and for the upcoming future. We know that for the what is it called? Next level. For the next level initiative, Barbara Gordon is gonna have her own book, but it's not gonna be about Batgirl. It's gonna be about Barbara. So Cassandra has become sort of like the Batgirl, which is cool. I love Cassandra, and it's surprising. So let's see what they do now with another volume of Batgirl, the Curse of the Blood. I think her logo is pretty cool though. Everything is cool about this. The logo, the blood, the sword. Let's see how they introduce to her current story everything that happened before with her family, and hopefully by the end of the story arc she was really like, oh, I do have my other family in Gotham. Stephanie is basically her sister. Like, I do have my life there. So let's see how they combine both of her lives by now. Apparently we're gonna have Cassandra for a little bit more as the main Batgirl. What else we have? There's still just 3. That Batgirls comic where all of them were kind of like together. It's just Cassandra, Stephanie, and Barbara, and we haven't seen Stephanie in a long time. But like, who knows? Next. So speaking of things that are important just because they are important, the current run of the Batman. Another storyline begins now. It's called Blood and Money. And of course, we have the Joker yet again. And how could you not talk about the Joker? How can you not recommend, hey, the Joker is coming back? The Joker was a big part of DC's KO recent event, but since the whole 3 Jokers, was it Fabok, the author for that book? Since the whole 3 Jokers dilemma, if you haven't read that miniseries, it's highly recommended. The 3 Jokers. The Joker lore, I think they already abandoned it. Whenever they try to do a Joker lore, like to make him more of a solid character, and by solid I mean to have a clear lore and like a clear background without saying who he is, they always end up making it even weirder, making it even harder to follow, making it even more ambiguous. And I don't think in this run of the Batman they're gonna do something different. I really don't think so. So the previous story arc for Batman ended kind of like, it was okay. Like, I didn't love it because I couldn't get into like a main storyline, like into a main objective of it. It felt so much like a setup. It felt so much like an introductory story arc. It had those quirky things of talking about his gadgets or like creating some new relationships, But in the end, it did feel like an introductory story arc with not too much at stake. But now that the Joker is once again in it, there's no way and there's no universe in the multiverse where a Batman story whose main villain is the Joker is not important. That is just not how the world works. So if the Joker is back, a new story starring the Joker happens or begins, well, you gotta be there. Next. This is the final issue for Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees, the Rite of Spring, the most famous story of a bear serial killer. And here's what I have to say about it. Okay, I love the whole thing, but the final story arc, and I'm not gonna spoil it, and the final ideas that have been introduced as part of the ending of the book, basically. I don't want to say there won't be a next one. Who knows? There might be a next one for all we know. But the ending of this story wasn't as satisfactory as I wanted it to be. I think the thrill of the case was there. I think the novelty and the excitement of the visuals were there. The shock and the kind of like that feeling of awe of the story was there. Everything was in place, but for something so creative, for something so exciting, I was hoping for a proposal, an interpretative proposal of serial killers that would go beyond, that would offer something groundbreaking. And I don't feel that it was that much there. They relied on one of the classic things you can do in serial killer stories, and sort of rely only in the shock and emotion of the situation itself, because serial killers are not, I mean, they might be a kind of common thing, but they are not something that happens every day. So you just rely on the shock and the shock value. That's why it's called shock value of seeing a serial killer, especially if it's a cute bear in a city of cute animals. You know, the main killer's real motivations and sort of like real personality didn't really shine through towards the end. It was left in mystery. It was left like, yeah, it's for you to figure out what you want to make of it. And that's all good. I love that. But I sure have wished there was like more of an offering from a theoretical point of view. We'll see. But this series is ending in issue number 6 this week. Well, excited to see the ending. Next. Speaking of endings, this is KO finally ending. I don't want to spoil anything, but they did a really brilliant thing. You know, the whole tournament was who's gonna win and what are they gonna do with the powers. If you boil down this is KO to that bare minimum, of course you wanna see the ending. I said it many times. DC do events just better. If you get into the end of a DC event, you know something important is gonna happen. You know it is something that people are gonna be taking notice from here to the until the next event. So there's a bunch of facts that need to happen by the end of KO that are important. Who won? What are they gonna do with the powers? How are they gonna restore the universe? What's gonna happen with Darkseid? You know, and how every character involved in it is going to change. As we have many ongoings right now, we know they're not going to change right away, but that change might be reflected in the close future for many of these characters. And as I was talking trash about Avengers, even though it's not an event, that is how you make an epic finale. A bunch of things that need to come to a close, a bunch of things that are relevant, a bunch of things that are inescapable, a bunch of things that are gonna be kind of like long lasting. That is the meaning of epic, you know, because we know these characters don't ever die. So And you can see that online in many summaries and everything, how every DC event has done something important. As a matter of fact, during KO, one of the characters that made a comeback was Superboy Prime, right? And all of the things he's done and all of the things that made the character important come from events. So if you are even mildly into the whole DC universe, you must read KO, at least the 5 main issues. And again, that's why DC's events are just better in that sense. You know, if you like the DC's comic universe, every event is relevant, and every event is important. This is KO. This is the end. This is, I don't know. I don't know who's gonna win, and I don't know what they're gonna do. So better read this final issue. Next. I've been into this Disney villain kind of like hype. Last week's book of the week was Ursula. I haven't had a chance to read it yet, of course, but keep them rolling. And we've joked with me and my friends about Gaston for a long time. Gaston, one of the main antagonists of the Beauty and the Beast, is one of like the most cartoonish bad guys. He reminds me a little bit of the bad guy from Tarzan, but the difference is like the guy from Tarzan, the bad guy from Tarzan, he has a clear personality, kind of like developed. He is a poacher, he is a villain, he doesn't have any respect or empathy for animals. He's just a cruel man. Gaston, for all of his cartoonish characteristics, he doesn't have that kind of like closed-ended personality or like closed-ended story. Like, I don't see even you would need to force a lot of background into the bad guy from Tarzan to make him likable. That is not the case for Gaston. It's a small town. This is like a star of a small town. Like, you have such a small town, everybody. So what made him a bad guy? He's a jerk. That's for sure. But Gaston is like one of those charismatic jerks. What is that saying? You love to hate him? But anyways, the whole Disney villain treatment Dynamite has been doing in their line of comic books have been super interesting. And how are they gonna make this jerk Gaston into something else? Or anything at all? Maybe they won't go that route. Maybe he's just a jerk. He's just a funny jerk. I don't know. But since the previous Disney villains books have been so fun and so interesting, well, now you're going into the deep end. Let's tackle Gaston. Let's talk about Gaston. It's not an easy villain to make into something quote unquote deeper or into something more emotional or something. I don't know. But it's Gaston, man. Even his gay friend is gonna be there. That weirdo gay friend. So I'm excited to see Gaston. As much as I was excited, not as much as I'm excited to read Ursula's, but it's Gaston. Next. Finally, I've been talking about this book for so long, and it's finally here. Danny Moonstar's first solo book, I think ever. Is it? But anyways, we are in an X-Men context where like big things are happening, and we don't have that many parallel X-Men stories. I talk about how the Wolverine solo story is just okay. The other day I read the X-23 book, and it seems to also be appealing to that same spot where X-23 has always lived, like the whole clone secret society, whatever. Cyclops solo book is also really personal and really private. Um, as I said, Wolverine has been kind of like meh. Not the one that is tied to Armageddon, but the other one who has Silver Sable in it. So the X-Men solo books have been kind of like weird, but Danny is not that big of a character, you know. So I'm really excited to see her. Like recently, I rewatched Prey also, and I hope they bring more of her Native American background to this book. I really do, and make something really fun about it. For some reason, I always thought that Dani is such a cool-looking character, and her powers are so mystically connected to her native background. It's something that in on itself is so interesting and so cool, and I don't know. I'm just excited. I hope to see a book full of cultural references, and she doesn't need to go hard on the main X-Men thing, whatever they are doing. You know, I'm just looking forward to it. I'm really excited. I've been excited for a long time, so I hope I can get to it in the next couple of weeks for sure. Next. So Wagner and Hilliard, known for what else did they do together? I think they did that plastic series about serial killers. Speaking of serial killers, you know, um, it's the series is called Narco, but it's about narcolepsy. It's about this guy who has narcolepsy, and he lives at home, and he ends up like, how do you call it, like you're walking and you stumble, right? He stumbled into a murder, and now he's the main suspect of the murder. I don't know if that plot sounds interesting on itself. I just think, especially Hillard, he has become kind of like an icon of um, serial killers, and like he did the fashion. I'm a fashion serial killer. I don't know. I it's really strange because I think he has as an artist, he has this commission style where you can commission him to make you into a severed head. Like he draws you as a severed head inside of a plastic bag, and it's so bizarre. And he gets to kind of like make a caricature of you inside of this plastic bag, like it's your severed head, but like let's say if you're a painter, you're gonna have like a paintbrush with you inside the bag, or like something like that. I don't know, it's strange. As I said, I'm not really that interested in the story, but these guys, they just keep doing weird shit with killers, murders, and ultimately their stories and art are fairly interesting. I'm kind of like even used to Hilliard stories. I mean, or art related stories, like just being about murder. And I don't want to say they look cool, but they look. What's the emotion you can say they provoke? It's not because it's not disgust. It's not like, ugh, you know. It's not an immediate retraction. It's like cozy in a way. Like their brand of violence and explicit, really explicit violence is cozy in a way. like keep exploring and exploring a subject matter and kind of like a human reality in a way that it never ends. And by the way they portray it, you can keep doing this, reflecting on this issue. Like you can keep thinking about it, and you can keep like, okay, what is the disturbing thing about this? What's wrong with this? What's acceptable of it? Well, I don't think murder is ever acceptable for that note, but it's about accepting the humanity of it. And that general discussion is what I always feel when I see his art in general. So I guess that's why I'm gonna check Narco out, even though I'm not particularly interested on that synopsis for that story. Next. When I was talking about Poison Ivy, another book that I've been following for a while, when I was talking about like what's gonna happen, like which direction are they gonna take, I remember saying like, oh, is she gonna come back to her villain ways, the past? This is my book of the week, by the way. For the past story arc for Poison Ivy, she was pushed so much into the villain ways again. Like she even said so in the book itself. Like that sort of, I'm giving up. Like I'm giving up. I'm just releasing myself into apparently the only thing I can do, which is being a supervillain. I can't understand my life without it. And she has like this sort of epiphany of like, okay, I'm a villain. Like what all of my beliefs, what I think life it is, like how I built my relationships, everything about me is being a supervillain. So at the end of those story arcs, she goes like, so what am I gonna do? I'm gonna run for office. What? Like, I could have never ever expected that. Gotham by now has had some fucked up majors. I think, Vandal Savage is now the police commissioner, but I think he was mayor too. But I could have never seen that coming in a million years. I did not. I didn't see it coming, and it was so funny. Because as I said, I was building this image during this whole run of Poison Ivy. Her, like at the beginning, it was all how to be a hero. Right? Can I be a hero? Dealing with relationships. Well, that was kind of like in the middle. The very beginning of this current run of Poison Ivy had her doing the whole fungus thing and being a monster, right? But she was on the sides, like she was an outlier, a misfit, right? Having her monstrous adventure. But through the development of the story arc, we had her rediscovering her relationships, trying to be a hero, giving that a chance, seeing if there is a road where she could be that, being drawn back to her terrorist, like eco-terrorist roots, fulfilling the role of a prophet, like seeing if that somehow coordinates with her role as an avatar of the green, her connection to the green, like everything. It has so many layers. It was so funny. It has so much potential. It could go so many roads. The character itself, it felt like Ivy during this whole run was always on the edge, and she would get little breaks to, I don't know, whenever Harley would appear, she would have tiny breaks to kind of like sit down and wonder to herself, like, who am I and what do I want to do with this role that I've taken? You know, like it's not just a super villain anymore, but towards the end of the story, like until now, like apparently that was the only road. Everything came together for that road to be taken. I'm gonna be a super villain. I'm gonna just get kicked in my face by Batman every once in a while, and they spring the the trap card, and she goes, "I'm gonna run for office." Man, that shit was brilliant. It really was. So now we're here, the start of the Major Ivy story arc. Man, I could not be more excited. And before, I mean, I mentioned before that to me, Ivy and Harley are kind of like the permanent couple, like the Sue Storm and Reed Richards of the DC universe. They haven't really done too much with it lately, but I'm not gonna focus on that. I'm just gonna say that Ivy has been a character, one of those characters that has grown so much in the past like decade or something. One of those characters that has really moved from being a supervillain to be a character on her own, and that shit has been awesome. And even bigger Batman villains have never done that. That you have like fucking Bane, Ra's al Ghul, you know, they have all of these big characters, and none of them have moved away from just being the bad guy, like in like the bad guy of the run. You know, the bad guy in turn. Like, this is my shift. This is my turn to be the bad guy. Even like epic ones, as I say, like Bane. None of them have gone as far, as deep, and as fun as people, growing up as people, as Poison Ivy has. You know, even when Tom King did a little like thing with the Penguin, he still went back to just being a villain, right? But like, that's not Poison Ivy. She's a character on her own now. Anti-hero, villain, major, you be the judge. Poison Ivy, the book of the week. And next, last but not least, let's make a little mention to the all-new Spider Gwen Ghost Spider for just one reason and one reason only. They chose Mysterio to be her first big bad guy for this all-new Spider Gwen, because the whole first story arc was highly introductory with her new love interest and her new kind of like reality in 616, right? Like, she's part of the main Marvel universe now. But this is I don't even know if you can say it's a big deal, because Mysterio, for all of his good stories throughout the years, it's always been a B tier character at best. Like, out of all the Spider villain rogue gallery, Mysterio is only a B tier. What I find most interesting about having Mysterio being kind of like the first big important, I don't even know if I could call him important, being as I just say, he's B tier, is that when in Ultimate Spider-Man she was part of the Mysterio collective. I doubt they're gonna do that connection, but if you've been following Ultimate Spider-Man, it is going to be a little bit triggering to see Gwen and Mysterio have at it, you know, or have some sort of story. In this case, I have no expectations whatsoever, because I don't even remember what was the last thing Mysterio ever did. I think he was part of the new Sinister Six back in, I don't know. He's a B tier guy. Fox. The best thing he did was when he was a good guy, quote unquote good guy, and he had that run with Mary Jane Watson, and he was making a movie, and Mary Jane wanted to be the best for his movie. Remember that story arc? Because in the end, Mysterio was just a film guy. He was a special effects guy, and he wanted to do a movie, and he wanted to be a good guy and make a movie. You remember that? Years ago, before MJ became Venom, before Ultimate Spider-Man, when Spider Gwen was in her own universe, like years ago. But I guess it's interesting enough. I didn't really love the first story arc for all new Spider-Gwen, Ghost Spider. They should bring that title down, right? The problem is everybody knows her as Spider-Gwen by now, so they've done their best to get rid of it, to get rid of Spider-Gwen, but they can't. And by now they will never be able to do so. Nobody, I think, first called this character as Ghost Spider, like nobody. And the Into Spider-Verse movies don't help either. But I don't think anyone would call this character Ghost Spider first and Spider-Gwen second. But whatever, I digress. Mysterio is the first big kind of like important rogue to be faced against Ghost Spider in her current run as a standing member hero of Earth 616. We'll see what's happened. It's interesting enough, I guess. I didn't really, as I said, I wasn't a big fan of the big story just to get a love interested, like just ran into it. But at least you have Silk playing like the bass. Whatever. And that's it for another week. A lot of interesting beginnings, like new story arcs, jumping points. Whenever they do that, new story arc begins here, it's a good jumping point. It's good when you don't have to be the one saying like, oh, this is a jumping point, but the book itself is like, yeah, I'm a jumping point. And I'm starting to make this tradition of saying what is left on my current backlog, but as I'm looking at my comic list here, I think I'm a week behind in Marvel and DC stuff. I read a couple of the Vertigo books that have come out. Looking forward to talk to them about them if I talk to them after that. But I still have I have a bunch of image shit to go through yet. Yeah. Including that G.I. Joe issue that I wanted to read, that I recommended a couple of weeks ago. But anyways, that's another book of comic books. I hope you get your favorite ones. I hope you enjoy whatever you're enjoying. And I'm gonna do that myself. See you all next week with more comic book craziness in a world where fake drawn bombs are way more interesting and human than the whole bullshit we have IRL. So take care, read on, enjoy, be happy, and see you all next week.